Hello everyone and welcome to Fiction Friday. Today we have episode 20 of The Squire. I hope you enjoy it.
Callian held her hand as they walked through the halls toward what he claimed was the most beautiful garden on the palace grounds. Rain doubted they had an ugly garden, as she'd seen nothing in the whole place that looked less than flawless. She remembered the look on Cole's face when he walked out of court, and amended her thought to almost nothing. She held in a sigh. Cole had no right to challenge Callian in front of everyone. Now that they'd returned to civilization, he'd need to learn his proper place. She'd find him in the morning and explain everything. They couldn't be informal here like they were on the road. She hoped he wouldn't be too upset. "We're here." Callian stopped in front of a door carved with vines and blossoms. "The king was kind enough to offer me the use of their private garden whenever I wanted. I think you'll like it." Rain smiled and put Cole out of her mind. "I'm sure it will be wonderful since we're together again." Callian squeezed her hand and pushed the door open. The garden spread out before her like a blossoming flower. The scent of fruit trees and roses reached her first. She stepped through and Callian released her hand for a moment. She spun around, eyes closed, and laughed. "It's everything you said it would be." She opened her eyes in time to see Callian shove a stone bench in front of the door. Her pulse raced. "What are you doing?" He smiled. "Wouldn't want anyone to walk in on us. The door doesn't have a lock, so I improvised." She relaxed. Her time on the road had made her jumpy. She held out her hand and Callian took it. He led her toward a grove of peach trees. She lay down in the soft grass and looked up at the night sky. She sat up and smiled at Callian. He got down on one knee and her heart skipped a beat. Would he propose right here? Callian fumbled with his boot. He must have hidden a ring there. She trembled. She'd been waiting for this moment, it seemed half her life. He looked up at her, eyes shining. "Since I saw you walk into court, I couldn't wait to get you alone." "This is it." She held out her hand. Callian pulled a dagger out of his boot. "After I kill you, I'll be the new king of Corinthia." Rain screamed and scrambled back. "Have you lost your mind?" "Not at all." Callian stalked toward her. "You've always been my path to the throne. I admit this isn't how I intended to go about it at first, but when the Dark Caster offered to spare my family's lands in exchange for your life, well, it wasn't a difficult decision." Rain rolled to her feet. She wished she'd had Cole teach her how to fight. She wished she'd listened to him when he told her Callian was a liar. "He was right about you. Cole warned me what a useless liar you were, but I didn't listen. I thought you loved me." Callian laughed and kept moving toward her. "Love you? You obnoxious brat. Do you know what a trial it was to play along with your little fantasy? The attack almost came as a relief. At least I wouldn't have to put up with you anymore. I pity the peasant having to babysit you for weeks on end. For the life of me, I can't figure out why he didn't just drown you in the lake and be done with it." "Did you sleep with him?" Her vision blurred with unshed tears. How could she have loved this monster? "He was kind. Cole encouraged me and protected me from every threat with more skill than you could have mustered." "And where is your precious guardian now?" Callian was only a couple steps away now. Rain's eyes widened and Callian grinned. "Time to die, princess." Cole turned to the queen. "You assigned a bodyguard to Rain, didn't you?" Talia shook her head. "No, there's no threat to her in Celestia. She should be safe in the palace." "That scream argues otherwise. Can you tell me where it came from?" "I can find out." She rose from the bench and a white glow surrounded her. She lifted a few feet off the ground and spun in a circle. Her eyes popped open. "She's in the royal garden." Cole glanced around. "How many gardens do you have?" "4, and they're all connected." She walked to the edge of the garden. "Down there is the water garden. From the pond, run right until you reach a thick hedge. Look for purple flowers. They mark a gap that leads to the royal garden." Cole looked down at the shimmering water below. "Ah, shit." He jumped, the wind whipping through his hair for a second before he hit startlingly cold water. Cole's feet struck the bottom and he kicked off. He broke the surface and, sputtering, swam toward the right bank, clambered out of the water and ran. He passed marble benches and statues of animals, rose bushes and blackberries, before at last reaching the hedge. Cole trotted along beside it until he found a clump of purple flowers. He pushed through and popped out in another garden. In the distance, he heard voices. She was close. Cole ripped his sword from its sheath and ran. The voices got louder. They came from a clump of peach trees. He pushed through the branches and found Callion standing over Rain. "Time to die, princess," Callion said. Cole leapt at Callion and knocked him away from Rain. His sword went one way and Callion's dagger the other. They wrestled around, Callion cracking him in the ribs and Cole answering with a headbutt that broke Callion's nose. They kept rolling. Cole couldn't get a good grip on Callion with his wet hands. Somehow Callion got on top of Cole and wrapped his hands around his throat. Cole gagged and dots swam in his vision. Callion yelled and arched his back. He staggered to his feet and turned away from Cole, who sat up gasping for breath. Cole looked up. The hilt of Callion's dagger stuck out of his back and Rain stood behind him wearing a look of horror as though she couldn't believe what she'd done. Cole couldn't believe it either, but she hadn't finished the job. Callion took a step toward Rain and reached toward her. "How could you?" "Callion!" Cole said. He turned and Cole hit him in the chest with both hands. The blow knocked him off his feet. Callion landed flat on his back, the force of the impact driving the dagger out of his chest. He gasped once, and then stared at Cole through dead, disbelieving eyes. "Cole!" Rain ran to him and he held her while she cried. "He tried to kill me. I'm sorry I didn't listen. I just wanted everything to be the way it was, and I thought he loved me, and we would be together like back home." "Easy, princess. Take a breath. You're safe now." Banging came from the far side of the garden. Cole scrambled for his sword. "Callion blocked the door," Rain said. Cole relaxed. It must be Talia with the guards. "Will you be okay if I let them in?" Rain wiped the tears from her eyes and nodded. "I'm fine now." Cole doubted that, but he didn't want the guards to break the door down. They walked to the door, Rain leading the way as he had no idea where it was. When they arrived, Cole shoved the bench aside. Outside, Talia, along with a handful of guards and a white-robed man, stood waiting. "Is she?" Talia asked. "I'm fine." Rain spoke for herself, head high, no sign of the terrified girl visible. She could act. Cole had to give her that. Squire Cole arrived in time to stop Callion. Talia smiled. "I'm so glad you're safe." "Where's the body?" the man in the robe asked. Cole pointed back toward the peach grove. "I'll show you." He glanced at Rain. "I'll wait here," she said. Cole nodded and led Talia and the others back to where Callion's body waited. I don't know what he was thinking. Even if he killed her, how did he expect to escape? "That's one of the things we hope to learn," Talia said. The man in the robe made a methodical search of Callion's body. He found little save a small box, a few coins, and a handkerchief. His hand glowed like Talia's had in the garden, and he passed it over the coins. He passed it over the box, and a black spark leapt at him. The man jerked his hand back like he'd touched something hot. "Dark magic," Talia said. The man nodded and opened the box like a man expecting to find a snake waiting to strike. Inside, on a velvet cushion, rested a small black marble. Cole shook his head. What the hell was that supposed to be? "A dark vessel," the queen murmured. "Correct, Majesty," the robed man said. "I suspect it contains a portal spell. Once the boy had killed Princess Rain, he would have fled back to Zarin through a dark portal." "There's no doubt, then, that the Lich sent him?" "None, Majesty. There's no way the boy could have gotten this from anyone else." "Majesty, what's happening?" Cole asked. Talia looked at him, all traces of casualness gone. "Nothing good. We need to have a talk. It's time you and Rain find out what's happening." 900 years? Rain was staring at Queen Talia, and Cole couldn't fault her reaction. He and Rain sat in soft leather chairs with the queen in a parlor deep in the palace. "He's that old?" "Indeed. Zarin is one of the few survivors of the Great War. We believe he was an apprentice to one of the Dark Casters that died. That's speculation on our part, of course. What we know for certain is he's the most powerful Dark Caster in the world, and he and his army have laid waste to now 6 of the Lake Kingdoms. His invasion of Corinthia is the first time he failed in his objective. Failed? I'd say he did a pretty good job destroying my home, Rain said. The destruction and chaos are a means, not an end. Zarin has one and only one goal: breaking the 10 royal swords. The swords can only be broken after all the members of the royal family are dead. You, Princess, are the first to escape after one of Zarin's attacks. I don't understand. Rain got up and paced around the little room. What's so important about that stupid sword that he'd kill thousands just to get me and my family? The swords are anchors that secure the darkness's binding. Every time a sword is broken, the binding loosens a little more. When all 10 are gone, the darkness will be free, and the dark wars will begin again. That's what he wants more than anything. That's insane, Cole said. I've read some of the histories. Millions died in past wars. Angels and demons laid waste to whole kingdoms. Why would anyone want that? Dark casters like Zarin thrive on conflict. It makes them stronger. If the darkness is freed, Zarin will become 10 times stronger. He'll have a river of dark power to draw on instead of a trickle. The light caster's power will increase as well, but none living have any experience in using their powers in a large-scale conflict. That alone would give Zarin a huge advantage. Rain dropped back into her chair. Why didn't they seal the darkness so no power escaped? If they did it right, this monster would have no power. Talia smiled a gentle smile. I understand your frustration. Imagine a boiling kettle with a cork in it. If no steam escapes, what happens? It explodes. Cole understood now. They had to let a little out or the prison wouldn't hold. Exactly. So now what? Rain asked. Do I have to hide here forever? For the near future, at least. You'll be in danger anywhere you go. If you're willing to learn, however, there may be something you can do to hurt Zarin. She leaned forward, eager now. Tell me, you need to strengthen your connection to the sword. Our lightcasters can teach you how. When the connection is strong enough, you can call it to you, snatch it right out from under his nose. Rain grinned. I like the sound of that. 2 weeks and nothing from the boy. Zarin paced in his casting chamber. Reliable help was so hard to come by. He stumbled and looked back. 3 toes from his left foot had fallen off. He couldn't delay any more. The girl would have to wait. He sent a mental call, and a few seconds later the door opened, revealing the imposing form of the Black Prince. You summoned me. I'm leaving you in charge of the army. I need to return to the Citadel. The noble brat failed, I take it. What do you want me to do? Gather food and supplies. When I return, we'll begin the final push. The Black Prince's armor creaked when he leaned in. At last. Everything will be ready when you return, Master. Zarin dismissed his servant with a wave of his hand. The Black Prince could handle the army while Zarin prepared his new body. He stepped into the circle and spoke the words to an ancient spell. When he finished, Zarin started the long walk up to the courtyard. His transportation should be waiting when he arrived. The shadow drake towered over the terrified beastmen in the courtyard. 30 feet long with smoke-gray scales, the shadow drake was one of a handful that escaped the final battle of the Great War. As Zarin approached, it crouched to allow him to climb up between its wings. When he'd gotten a secure seat, Zarin sent a mental command and the drake leapt and lashed its wings. In moments, the castle resembled a speck on the ground. His steed needed no directions. It knew where he wanted to go. It flew deep into the mountains, beyond the territory the beastmen claimed for their villages, to a dark and desolate spot high in the peaks where nothing grew and the air carried such a chill that a mortal man wouldn't last an hour. On top of the highest peak, on a spot flattened by magic, his former master's sanctuary thrust into the gray sky. Constructed of black basalt and held together by dark power, the citadel was his master's final legacy. The drake landed on the highest tower and let his master down. Zarin dismissed the creature with a thought and crossed an open bridge to the citadel proper. A door of black wood swung open at his approach. Zarin remembered when, over 800 years ago, he'd mastered the dark sufficiently to overcome his master's guardians and claimed the citadel for himself. The excitement of that accomplishment didn't begin to compare with how he felt when he found the cache of dark artifacts his master had left along with the tome of secret lore. It had taken another 10 years for him to master it all. Zarin walked down a circular staircase, and at the bottom another door opened and he entered his primary casting chamber, a circular room covered in runes. In the center rested a stone table upon which a fresh body waited. Dark magic had preserved it perfectly for the last 100 years, just waiting for his eventual need. Zarin opened himself to the dark and began to cast.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Fiction Friday. If you liked what you heard, you can find more of my fiction on my website, jamesewisher.com. Please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with anyone else you think might enjoy the show. Until next week, goodbye.